The hall was filled with uniforms, medals, and applause, the annual Navy Valor ceremony, where legends were named, and pride echoed through the air. The camera pans across polished shoes, crisp salutes, and proud families standing tall under the gleam of the American flag. But at the very back, standing silently with his teenage son, was a man who didn't belong to the noise, Marcus Langston, a quiet, middle-aged mechanic with hands hardened by years of labor. His simple black cap bore faded golden letters, U.S. Navy SEALs. He looked like any other veteran, except for the way people's eyes seemed to skip over him, as if they could sense there was more to his silence than they could understand. As the ceremony reached its highlight, Admiral Harris, a confident man with decades of medals pinned to his chest, stepped down from the podium to greet guests. He noticed Marcus standing by the exit and with a casual smirk said loudly enough for others to hear, "And what about you, son? What was your call sign?" The crowd chuckled, assuming the man was just a base worker or an old sailor trying to relive the past. Marcus paused, his jaw tightening ever so slightly, before answering in a low, calm tone that cut through the laughter like a blade. "Iron Ghost, sir." The Admiral froze. The color drained from his face, and a hush fell over the crowd. You could hear the air conditioner hum, the faint tapping of a dropped pen, the heartbeat of realization beginning to pound in the Admiral's chest. The name Iron Ghost wasn't one people said lightly. It was a legend, a phantom from covert Navy SEAL files, a man whose missions were so classified that even commanding officers weren't briefed. The Admiral's eyes darted to Marcus's cap, then back to his face, as memories of classified operations, whispered code names, and impossible rescues flashed through his mind. Clapperboard camera zooms in slowly on Marcus's face, calm, steady, unreadable. Now imagine hearing that voice in your head as you sit here watching this story unfold. Because what's about to happen next isn't just about a man being recognized. It's about truth, humility, and what happens when arrogance meets quiet greatness. Welcome to Swift Tale, the channel where real stories meet cinematic storytelling. If you're visiting for the first time, make sure to like, share, and subscribe, because today's story will change how you see respect, race, and heroism forever. But before we dive deeper, let me ask you this. Do you think real heroes need recognition, or is silence their greatest badge of honor? This story matters because sometimes the men who stand in the shadows are the very ones who carried the light for everyone else. And tonight, the world is about to find out who Iron Ghost really is. The chatter in the Grand Navy Hall simmered into awkward silence as the word Iron Ghost left Marcus Langston's lips. Admiral Harris blinked once, twice, his confident grin faltering as a flicker of recognition crossed his eyes. He looked around, forcing a chuckle to break the tension. "Iron Ghost, huh? Haven't heard that one in a while." But his voice wavered. A few officers near the stage exchanged puzzled looks. One of them, a young lieutenant named Reed, leaned toward another and whispered, "Wait, isn't that classified? I thought Iron Ghost was a ghost story." Marcus simply nodded politely, his gaze steady, saying nothing more. His son Caleb, barely 16, looked up at his father with quiet confusion. To him, his dad was just a hard-working man who fixed cars and rarely talked about the past. He had never seen Admiral Harris, the crowd of uniformed men, or the sea of medals, but he could tell something in the air had shifted. The Admiral tried to regain composure. "Well, every SEAL's got a story," he said lightly. "What unit were you with, mister?" Marcus's calm reply was barely above a whisper, "DVGRU, Task Force 9. That name hit the room like a thunderclap. Every trained soldier in the hall knew what that meant, DVGRU, or SEAL Team 6, the elite of the elite. A ripple of murmurs spread through the audience. One older officer, Commander Ruiz, leaned forward in disbelief. "That can't be right," he muttered. "Task Force 9 was," he stopped himself, "classified, everyone knew it." The Admiral's face stiffened. Suddenly, his friendly interrogation looked more like humiliation, not of Marcus, but of himself. The legendary unit Marcus had just mentioned was shrouded in secrecy. Only whispers circulated in the ranks, a covert team responsible for operations that were never logged, never acknowledged, and never meant to be spoken aloud. Caleb glanced around nervously. "Dad," he whispered. Marcus put a hand on his son's shoulder and smiled faintly. It's okay, son, just some old history. Admiral Harris cleared his throat, desperately searching for control. Iron Ghost, now where have I heard that before? He forced a chuckle again, but everyone could hear the unease under it. Then, from the back of the room, a gruff voice spoke up. You've heard it, Admiral, because Iron Ghost saved half your team in Kandahar 2009. All eyes turned to an older, scarred man stepping forward, Chief Petty Officer Leon Briggs, retired SEAL and Harris's old teammate. The Admiral stiffened as Briggs approached Marcus, his expression softening with respect. Damn, he breathed. It's really you. The two men stared at each other for a long moment. The tension broke as Briggs extended his hand. Welcome home, Ghost. The hall erupted into stunned whispers. Caleb's eyes widened. For the first time, he realized his father wasn't just a veteran. He was something far more. The Admiral swallowed hard. So, you two served together. Briggs nodded slowly. Served with him? No, sir. We survived because of him. The crowd leaned closer. Briggs's voice grew steadier as he spoke. Back in Kandahar, we were ambushed. Lost comms, no backup, pinned for 2 days. Iron Ghost went dark, disappeared into the desert. We thought he was gone. But at dawn, he came back dragging 2 hostages, wounded but alive, and neutralized the entire enemy flank alone. Gasps spread across the hall. Even the Admiral's assistant stopped typing. Briggs looked at Marcus. They told me you'd vanished after that mission. We heard rumors that you turned down your medals, walked away. Marcus gave a faint, almost tired smile. I didn't walk away, I just went home. Some of us were never built for the spotlight. The Admiral stepped forward, his tone changing from arrogance to apology. Commander Langston, Iron Ghost, I had no idea. Marcus's gaze lifted, steady and quiet. No reason you would, sir. The best missions are the ones nobody talks about. The silence that followed was heavy, the kind that made every man in uniform stand a little taller. The Admiral's face softened. The man he had mocked wasn't just another veteran. He was a ghost from the deepest shadows of the Navy, a man whose actions were the reason others lived to stand there today. Caleb looked at his father in awe. For the first time, he saw more than just a quiet dad who worked overtime at a dusty garage. He saw the hero behind the silence, the warrior who had carried the weight of lives and secrets no one would ever truly know. As the applause began, hesitant at first, then thunderous, Marcus nodded respectfully, then turned to his son. Let's go, Caleb, he said softly. The past doesn't need an audience. But before he could leave, Admiral Harris called out, voice trembling slightly. Commander Langston, Iron Ghost, I'd be honored if you stayed. I think everyone here could learn a thing or two about humility, myself included. Marcus paused at the door, then turned with a calm smile. Respect isn't learned, Admiral. It's earned one life at a time. And with that, the legend known as Iron Ghost walked out of the hall, leaving silence, awe, and a trail of questions behind him. The sound of the applause from the Navy Hall fades, replaced by a low, haunting hum of desert wind. The screen dissolves into swirling sand, Afghanistan 2009. The world was painted in dust and heat, and the horizon shimmered like glass. A small SEAL team, 12 men deep, crawled through the ruins of an abandoned village north of Kandahar. Their mission, extract 2 kidnapped CIA field officers before dawn. Their leader, a younger, sharper Marcus Langston, had no call sign yet. Eyes up, Marcus whispered through his comms, his deep voice steady despite the rising tension. Echo 1, take the South Ridge, Briggs on me. The team moved like shadows. Every breath was measured, every step deliberate. They were ghosts in the sand, unseen and unheard. Hours passed before everything fell apart. Without warning, an RPG screamed across the desert and slammed into a mud wall, blasting the night open with fire and debris. The team hit the ground. Ambush, take cover, someone yelled. The world turned into chaos, bullets shredding the air, sand exploding in violent gusts, and the sound of men shouting orders through static. Marcus crawled behind a crumbling stone wall, his rifle tight against his shoulder. Bravo team, status. No response. He switched channels, Echo 1. Only silence. He peeked around the wall and froze. 6 of his men were pinned behind a destroyed truck. The 2 hostages, barely conscious, were being dragged into a nearby structure by armed insurgents. He counted at least 20 hostiles, heavily armed, and dug in. "Langston, we're cut off," Briggs shouted through the radio. "We need air support." "Negative," Marcus replied calmly, though his heart was pounding. "We are too deep. They'll never make it in time." He looked up at the black, starless sky. There was no light, no backup, no chance, just the desert, death, and duty. And then something inside him shifted. "Briggs," he said into the mic, his voice firm, "you hold position, keep the team alive. I'll handle the rest." "Handle it, Ghost? What are you talking about? That's suicide." Marcus took a deep breath and switched his radio off. "Not if I move fast enough." For the next 6 hours, Marcus disappeared. When dawn began to break, the first thing Briggs saw was a plume of smoke rising from the enemy compound. Then came the distant sound of gunfire, short, precise, surgical. By the time the sun crept over the horizon, the shooting had stopped. Out of the orange haze emerged a lone figure, Marcus Langston, dragging the 2 CIA hostages on a makeshift sled made from torn canvas. His uniform was shredded, his arm bleeding, and his face streaked with dirt and sweat. Behind him, the compound smoldered. Every enemy combatant inside was neutralized. Briggs ran toward him, disbelief etched across his face. "How the hell did you?" Marcus dropped the sled gently and leaned against a rock, his breathing ragged but calm. "Used their tunnels, moved under the ridge, hit their comm tower first. The rest followed the noise." "You did that alone?" Briggs asked, voice cracking. Marcus gave a faint, tired smile. "Didn't have much choice." Later, when the rescue choppers arrived, Briggs pulled one of the rescued agents aside. "He was everywhere," the man whispered in awe. "We thought there were 10 of him. He'd vanish in one shadow and reappear behind them. They called him Shaitan, the Ghost." And just like that, the name stuck. Iron Ghost. He earned it not for what he said, but for what he endured. The iron wasn't just his strength in combat, it was his resolve, the ability to keep moving when every bone screamed to stop. He was the kind of man who didn't need orders or medals, he just did what needed to be done. When the mission report reached command, the details were sealed under the highest classification. The official record said the team completed the objective, but everyone who had been there knew the truth. One man had carried 11 others through hell and brought them home. That night, as the team sat around the campfire, Briggs nudged him. "You know, Ghost," he said, "most guys would brag for a lifetime after something like that." Marcus stared into the fire, silent for a long moment. "That's the problem," he said quietly. "War doesn't need more men talking, it needs more men listening." From that moment on, Iron Ghost became a legend whispered only among the SEALs, the man who could disappear into chaos and come back with hope. Back in the present day, the story of Kandahar would soon come full circle, because what happened that night didn't just make Marcus a hero, it made him a ghost even to the Navy itself. And now, years later, that ghost had walked into a ceremony full of admirals and recognition, the last place he ever wanted to be. But fate wasn't done with him yet. The roar of chopper blades and the burning sands of Kandahar faded into silence, replaced by the polished marble floors and quiet murmurs of the Navy Hall once again. The story of Iron Ghost had ended years ago, but tonight, its echo still lingered. The crowd was dispersing after the ceremony, yet no one could shake off what they had just witnessed. Admiral Harris, the man who once joked so easily, stood stiff and pale near the podium, replaying every word, every smirk he had made at Marcus Langston. His chest felt heavy, a mix of disbelief and guilt. Marcus, however, stood calmly near the exit, his teenage son Caleb beside him, staring at him as if seeing his father for the first time. The boy's voice finally broke the silence. "Dad, was all that true?" Marcus sighed, his gaze lowering to the Navy insignia carved into the floor. "Most of it," he said quietly. "Some parts they'll never know, and that's how it should be." Caleb frowned, his youthful curiosity clashing with awe. Why didn't you ever tell me that you were him, that you were Iron Ghost? Marcus turned toward his son, his expression both gentle and tired. Because that's not who I am anymore. Those things I did, they don't belong in stories. They belong to the men we lost, not the ones who made it out. Caleb looked down, but everyone was clapping for you, Dad. Even that Admiral guy looks scared. Marcus chuckled softly, the first hint of warmth in his face. Respect and fear aren't the same thing, son. Sometimes the loudest men in the room have the smallest stories, and the quietest ones carry the biggest. Across the room, Admiral Harris was still watching them. The pride and bravado that once defined him had drained away, replaced by something deeper: respect. He motioned to his aide, who nodded and left the hall. Moments later, the Admiral walked toward Marcus and Caleb, his polished boots echoing against the tile. The crowd parted silently, as if even they knew this moment carried weight. "Commander Langston," Harris said, his tone measured and formal this time, "I owe you an apology." Marcus turned, eyes steady. "No, sir, you don't owe me anything. You didn't know." Harris shook his head. "That's the thing. I should have. I knew your name. I saw it on classified rosters years ago. I just never made the connection. I thought you were gone. You disappeared after Operation Iron Wing." At the mention of that mission, Marcus's face darkened slightly. "Yeah, some ghosts prefer it that way." The Admiral hesitated, then continued. "You saved lives that day, not just your team's, mine too. You coordinated extraction for 2 squads that were cut off on the north perimeter. We never knew who pulled the strings. I thought it was command. Turns out it was you." Marcus nodded once, quietly. "Just doing what needed to be done, sir." Harris exhaled deeply, then glanced at Caleb. "Your father's a legend, son. There are stories about him even inside the Pentagon, the kind that don't have names or ranks, just whispers." Caleb looked at his father, pride shining through the confusion. "You always said heroes are just people who do what's right when no one's looking." Marcus smiled faintly. "That's still true." The Admiral straightened his posture. "Langston, I know you walked away from the Navy, but men like you don't stop serving, you just change how you do it. There's a new veterans mentorship program starting next quarter. We could use someone like you to train young recruits. No cameras, no medals, just real work." Marcus looked down at his hands, the same hands that once held rifles and now fixed broken engines. "I'll think about it, sir." Harris nodded respectfully. "That's all I ask." He extended his hand, this time not as a superior, but as a man paying tribute to another. Marcus hesitated for a moment, then shook it firmly. The Admiral's voice softened. "For what it's worth, Commander, I'm sorry for not recognizing you sooner." Marcus met his gaze. "Respect doesn't come from recognition, Admiral. It comes from how you treat people before you know who they are." That sentence hung in the air like truth itself. Even the junior officers nearby lowered their eyes, humbled by the weight of it. As the Admiral turned to leave, Caleb tugged at his father's sleeve. "Dad, does this mean you're going back?" Marcus smiled, his eyes distant, like a man remembering ghosts. "No, son, it means I've finally stopped running." Outside, the night air was cool and quiet. Marcus and Caleb walked toward their car, the sound of distant waves crashing against the naval pier. The boy glanced up at the stars, then back at his father. "So, Iron Ghost, huh?" Marcus chuckled softly. "Just Dad, kid, just Dad." But behind that calm smile, he knew something had shifted forever. The past he'd buried had resurfaced, and whether he liked it or not, the world now remembered Iron Ghost. And somewhere deep inside the Navy's command structure, the name Marcus Langston had reappeared on a few classified lips. Files that had been sealed for over a decade were suddenly being reviewed again, because ghosts like him never truly disappeared. The sound of a distant explosion echoed through the mountains of Afghanistan, painting the midnight sky in streaks of red and gold. Sergeant Marcus Langston, known only by his call sign Iron Ghost, crouched behind a shattered wall, his breathing steady, his eyes locked on the horizon. His team was pinned down, surrounded by hostiles in a remote valley known as Darrak's Gate, where no one survived more than 24 hours. The radio crackled with static, then a desperate voice cut through. Ghost, we're losing Bravo Squad. We need extraction now. Marcus gritted his teeth. Hold your position, I'm coming. His commanding officer's voice shouted through another channel, strained and loud. Negative, Ghost. You move now, you break protocol, you'll be on your own. Marcus hesitated for half a second, then he made his choice. Then I'll be on my own. That was the night the legend of Iron Ghost was born, and the man named Marcus Langston began to die. Through the chaos, Marcus moved like smoke, silent, invisible, methodical. He led a two-man diversion while drones overhead tracked enemy positions. Each movement was precise, each breath calculated. He saved Bravo Squad by outflanking the insurgents, using terrain and shadows to mask his approach. But the cost was steep. One of his men, Private Dawson, was hit. Marcus dragged him for nearly 2 miles under heavy fire, refusing to leave him behind. When the dust settled, Marcus and a handful of survivors stood in the wreckage of Darrac's Gate. Reinforcements arrived 20 minutes too late. Command called it a miracle, but Marcus knew better. It was a massacre that never should have happened. Back at base, he sat silently in the debrief room, blood dried on his hands. A junior officer slid a commendation form across the table, a Silver Star nomination. Marcus didn't even glance at it. Don't, he said flatly. This wasn't heroism, it was survival. The officer frowned. Sir, with respect, your actions saved. Marcus slammed his fist on the table. And cost lives. Dawson's gone. Don't talk to me about medals. The room went quiet. No one spoke after that. Within weeks, Marcus filed for transfer. Within months, he vanished from the active roster. Officially, Iron Ghost was classified as retired due to undisclosed medical reasons. Unofficially, he disappeared. But there was more to the story than even the Navy knew. The real reason Marcus left wasn't just the trauma, it was betrayal. During the Darrac's Gate mission, Marcus had received encrypted coordinates from command, coordinates that turned out to be a trap. The intel was compromised, leaked by someone inside. When Marcus traced it back, he discovered something horrifying: a senior intelligence officer, motivated by greed and arrogance, had sold positional data to a private contractor. Lives had been traded for profit. Marcus confronted him privately. The man smiled coldly. You're a ghost, Langston. No one's going to believe you. That night, Marcus deleted his own records, erased his operational identity, and walked out. Iron Ghost was gone. Years passed. Marcus settled into civilian life, working quiet jobs, keeping his head down. But the nightmares never stopped. The faces of the men he lost haunted his sleep: Dawson, Rivers, Lee, each one calling his name in the dark. He found solace only in family, his wife and his newborn son. He promised himself he'd never let violence touch them, never let the uniform define him again. Then came the day his wife passed away, sudden illness, no warning. Marcus was left raising Caleb alone, trying to balance grief with fatherhood. The man who once commanded elite units now struggled to make breakfast, help with homework, and smile when his heart was broken. He avoided his old comrades, ignored calls from the Navy, and buried Iron Ghost forever. Until one morning, an envelope arrived at his door, no return address, just an old mission patch from Darrac's Gate and a note inside that said, "They're reopening the files, be ready." Marcus's heart went cold. He burned the note, but the words never left his mind. Someone was digging into the past, his past, and if the wrong people found out, his quiet life would shatter. That's why, years later, when he walked into that Navy hall with Caleb, he did it quietly, under the radar. He never expected the Admiral to call him out. He never wanted Iron Ghost to exist again. But fate doesn't care what a man wants. It only reminds him who he really is. And as Marcus stared into the mirror that night after the ceremony, he whispered the same words he said before every mission. Move silent, hit hard, leave no shadow. The ghost was stirring again. The room fell into an uneasy silence after Admiral Kessler's trembling voice whispered the name Iron Ghost. Every officer present, every young SEAL candidate, every decorated veteran felt the shift in the air. It was like someone had said the name of a legend, a name you didn't speak unless you meant it. Admiral Kessler's hand hovered over the table, his eyes darting between the man standing before him and the black-and-white photograph hanging on the far wall, a grainy image of a masked soldier crouched behind enemy lines. That image, sealed and classified for years, was of him. Marcus Langston. The Admiral swallowed hard, his throat dry. No, it can't be, you were declared dead. Marcus's voice was calm but cold, every word weighted. Yeah, I liked it that way. The officers exchanged glances, whispering under their breath. The youngest recruit in the room, barely 21, looked up in awe. Sir, your iron ghost. Marcus didn't answer. He didn't need to. The way Kessler slowly stood and saluted said everything. For the first time that day, his son Caleb looked at him differently, with pride, confusion, and disbelief all tangled together. The man who tucked him in every night, who grilled burgers in their backyard, was suddenly a legend. Kessler lowered his salute. You should have told us you were alive, Commander. Marcus shook his head. You think I didn't try? The system wanted a ghost, someone to blame for a mission they botched. I just gave them what they wanted. Kessler winced. He'd heard rumors, whispers about a cover-up, about classified missions that went sideways because of faulty intel, but no one had ever confirmed it. And now, standing face to face with the man who lived it, he realized how deep the lies went. Marcus, the Admiral said quietly, using his first name for the first time, you need to know something. Darax Gate, it's being reopened. The files. The truth is coming out, but not from us. Marcus's eyes narrowed. Who? Kessler hesitated. Private contractors, the same ones who bought that intel years ago. They're digging through old records, blackmailing people in the Pentagon. They know you survived. A chill ran down Marcus's spine. He'd burned his past, erased his data, cut every tie, and yet somehow someone had found him. Why now? He asked. Because someone out there still wants you dead, Kessler said grimly, and the fact that you just showed up here, in public, means they know where to find you. The Admiral leaned closer, lowering his voice. Marcus, they were watching the ceremony, cameras everywhere, they saw you. For a moment, the sounds of the Navy Hall faded, the clinking of medals, the chatter, the laughter. Marcus could only hear the faint hum of danger in his chest. Years of training kicked in. His mind calculated exits, blind spots, possible ambush points. He turned to Caleb. We are leaving now. But before they could move, two men in suits approached, their posture too straight, their eyes too sharp to be ordinary security. Kessler stiffened. FBI. One of the men flashed a badge. We need to speak with Commander Langston, privately. Marcus's jaw tightened. About what? The agent exchanged a glance with his partner. About the Darax Gate leak, and the fact that two of your former squadmates are dead. The words hit like a hammer. Marcus felt the floor tilt beneath him. He hadn't spoken to anyone from his old team in years, not since he disappeared. And now, two of them were dead. Kessler looked horrified. You think he's involved? The agent shook his head. No, we think he's next. Marcus clenched his fists, his breathing slow and measured. The ghost inside him stirred again, the one he thought he'd buried. The instincts, the paranoia, the edge. He turned to his son, his voice steady but cold. Go wait by the car, don't talk to anyone. Dad. Now. Caleb obeyed. When the boy was gone, Marcus faced the agents. Who sent you? They exchanged glances again. A joint task force. But you need to understand, Commander, this isn't official. Someone high up wants this quiet. If we talk too loud, people start disappearing. Marcus studied them both. Then we don't talk loud, we move quiet. Kessler took a deep breath. Marcus, if what they're saying is true, you're in danger, but so is everyone connected to that mission, including me. Marcus nodded slowly. Then I guess the ghosts are back. As the agents handed him a sealed envelope stamped confidential, Marcus felt the weight of his past crushing down on him again. Inside were photos, surveillance images, timestamps, names. one name stood out. Dawson. But Dawson was dead. He had died in Darrak's Gate. Marcus had carried his body himself. Except now, according to the file, he wasn't dead at all. The room seemed to spin as Marcus processed the impossible. His brother-in-arms, the man he thought he'd buried, was alive, and possibly part of the same organization hunting him. Kessler saw the shift in his face. "What is it?" Marcus looked up slowly, his voice barely above a whisper. "They didn't kill Dawson, they turned him." Kessler's blood ran cold. Marcus looked toward the exit where his son had disappeared moments before. He felt it in his gut, the sense he hadn't felt in years. He was being watched. And as he walked out into the cold night, the streetlights flickering like eyes in the dark, he whispered the words that once made enemies tremble across continents. "If they want a ghost, they'll get one." The rain came down like shattered glass that night, cold, relentless, cutting through the darkness with the same precision Marcus Langston once carried into battle. The city was quiet except for the hum of streetlights and the occasional roar of distant thunder. In the reflection of a puddle, a pair of boots splashed through the water, heavy, deliberate. Iron Ghost was walking again. Marcus had parked his old Chevy in an alley 3 blocks from his house, making sure he hadn't been followed. His instincts were sharper than ever, a gift and a curse. He checked the rearview mirror, scanning for movement. Nothing. Still, he knew better than to trust. Nothing. Silence had always been the favorite cover of men who hunted ghosts. Inside his small garage, he flicked on a single light. The glow revealed a hidden compartment beneath the floorboards, a past he'd tried to bury. One by one, he lifted out relics of another life. A custom seal dagger, a tactical watch, a worn photo of his team. His fingers stopped when they touched a rusted metal tag, Iron Ghost, 971. He hadn't seen it in years. Now it felt like an old wound reopening. He slipped the dog tag over his neck. "One last mission," he murmured. "Across town." Admiral Kessler was packing inside his office, his nerves on fire. Files were spread across his desk, documents marked classified, red, sealed Team 9. Every line pointed to one terrifying conclusion. Someone inside the Navy Intelligence Division was selling black operations data to a private contractor network. And Marcus's former squadmate, Dawson, was at the center of it. But how? Dawson had died in front of them during Operation Darrak's Gate, the mission that broke their team and turned Marcus into a living ghost. Kessler picked up the phone. "Langston, it's Kessler, you were right. They're moving tonight at the port. Dock 47. If Dawson's alive, that's where you'll find him." Marcus's voice came through like gravel over steel. "Then I'll end this tonight." "Marcus," Kessler hesitated, "they'll be expecting you." "They always are," Marcus said flatly, hanging up. The docks were deserted, except for the whisper of waves and the low hum of freight machines. Through the rain, a convoy of black SUVs pulled up beside a massive cargo ship. Men in tactical suits moved like shadows, precise, disciplined, professional. They weren't mercenaries, they were trained operators. From the top of a nearby crane, Marcus watched through a thermal scope. His movements were quiet, controlled, every muscle obeying memory. He saw the face he thought he'd never see again. Dawson. Alive. He was older, harder, his left eye covered by a scarred patch. But it was him, talking to a man in a grey suit, someone Marcus recognized instantly. A man named Voss, the CEO of a private defense firm once contracted by the Navy. Marcus adjusted his earpiece, connecting to a small radio channel. Static filled the air. Then a faint, familiar voice whispered, "You shouldn't have come back, Ghost." Marcus froze. The voice was Dawson. "You've been watching me," Marcus replied quietly. "For years," Dawson said. "You should have stayed dead. You were supposed to." Marcus's jaw clenched. "You sold us out. You sold them out." Dawson chuckled bitterly. "You still think we were the good guys? Wake up, Ghost. We were pawns. You died for a lie, and I decided not to." Lightning flashed, revealing Dawson's men surrounding the dock. "You came alone?" Dawson asked. Marcus smirked. "Did I?" Before Dawson could answer, Lights exploded across the docks, spotlights, drones, the sharp crack of gunfire. Admiral Kessler had called in backup, a covert SEAL unit loyal only to Marcus. Chaos erupted. Bullets sliced the rain, crates shattered, men dove for cover. Marcus moved through it like smoke, invisible, lethal, precise, one shot, one strike, one move ahead. He reached the pier where Dawson was escaping toward the ship. Their eyes met, two brothers turned enemies, two soldiers bound by betrayal. "You were my brother," Marcus shouted over the rain. "And you were my mistake," Dawson snarled, drawing his weapon. They fired almost simultaneously, both hitting cover, both moving like men who knew each other's every move. Years of fighting side by side now turned against them. The fight wasn't about orders or missions anymore, it was personal. Marcus finally disarmed him, pinning him against a steel container. The rain soaked them both, blood mixing with water. "Why?" Marcus demanded. "Why betray us?" Dawson coughed, smirking through the pain. "Because I was tired of dying for people who don't care if we live. They called you a ghost, Marcus. I became one too, just a different kind." Before Marcus could respond, a red laser dot appeared on Dawson's chest. Marcus turned, sniper. But before he could react, Dawson shoved Marcus away. The bullet tore through Dawson's body. He fell back, gasping. Marcus caught him, lowering him to the ground. Dawson's eyes flickered with regret. "You were right," he whispered. "They used us." "Who?" Marcus pressed. Dawson's hand trembled as he pressed a flash drive into Marcus's palm. "Everything is on this. Names, operations, even Kessler." His eyes went still. The rain washed over his lifeless face. Marcus froze. "Kessler." He turned toward the distant warehouse. Through the haze, he saw Admiral Kessler watching from a balcony, a small red light glowing on his earpiece. He wasn't calling reinforcements, he was giving orders. Marcus's stomach turned cold. The realization hit him harder than the rain ever could. The betrayal hadn't started with Dawson, it had started at the top. And now, Iron Ghost wasn't just fighting to survive. He was coming for the truth. The rain had stopped, but the air still crackled with the residue of chaos. The docks were a graveyard of shattered crates, spent shells, and silence. The faint blue flash of police lights painted the wet asphalt, but Marcus Langston, Iron Ghost, was already gone. He melted into the night the way he always had, leaving behind nothing but confusion and bodies. In the glove compartment of his Chevy, the flash drive Dawson gave him glimmered under the dim dashboard light, a piece of plastic that could burn entire governments to the ground. Marcus drove in silence, his son's photo clipped to the visor, reminding him why he had to see this through. He had buried his past once. This time, he'd bury the lies. He pulled into an abandoned airstrip just outside the city, his old fallback base, long forgotten by the military. Inside a hangar, he booted up an encrypted laptop, the screen flickering to life. The flash drive's contents opened, revealing folder after folder marked with names: Project Revenant, Ghost Cell, Operation Darax Gate, and at the very top, Kessler. Marcus scrolled through video files, mission reports, communications between Navy intelligence and Voss's private defense firm. The documents were damning. Contracts exchanged for silence, missions altered to frame soldiers as traitors, and the signature that authorized the cover-up, Admiral Jonathan Kessler. Marcus leaned back, his face hard as stone. Kessler hadn't just betrayed him, he had orchestrated everything. The fake death, the classified burial, even the destruction of his team. And now, Kessler was working with Voss to sell classified SEAL operations to foreign bidders. A soft chime broke his focus. His phone buzzed with an incoming text. "Unknown number, still alive, Ghost. You should have stayed buried." Marcus's blood ran cold. Whoever it was, they knew where he was. He glanced at the corner of the laptop. His IP had been traced. He killed the lights instantly and pulled his weapon. Within seconds, the sound of engines echoed outside the hangar. 3 SUVs pulled up, headlights slicing through the dark. Figures stepped out, black uniforms, no insignia, military precision. Contractor assassins. Marcus muttered, "So it begins." The first man breached the door, and Marcus moved like a shadow, silent, efficient, lethal. 2 shots, 1 chokehold, 1 knife to the throat. The others hesitated, realizing too late that the legend they'd come to kill was already hunting them. Within minutes, the hangar was still again, except for the hum of Marcus's laptop. Blood pooled under flickering lights as Marcus copied the files onto a second encrypted drive. He wasn't going to run this time. He was going to expose them. He reached for his phone and dialed a single number, a contact from the past. A journalist he once saved during a covert operation in Syria, Lena Vargas, now an investigative reporter known for tearing down corrupt institutions. When she answered, her voice was groggy but sharp. "Marcus Langston, you're supposed to be dead." "Yeah," he said grimly. "Tell that to the men who just tried to make it true." Within hours, they met in a parking garage downtown, the kind of place where ghosts and secrets belong. Lena's eyes widened when she saw him, still soaked in blood and rain. "Jesus, you look worse than the myth said." Marcus smirked faintly. "You still got that thing where you talk too much." She ignored the jab, her tone shifting. "What do you have?" He handed her the flash drive. Everything. Names, payments, mission logs. Voss, Kessler, they sold our operations to the highest bidder, and they covered it by killing my team. Lena's fingers trembled slightly as she plugged the drive into her laptop. Her eyes scanned the files, disbelief turning into horror. "Marcus, this isn't just a scandal, this is treason." Before she could say more, a bullet shattered the car window beside them. They ducked instinctively. Snipers. Marcus grabbed her and pulled her behind a concrete pillar. "They followed you." "Or they followed you," she snapped. "Doesn't matter now." He reloaded his weapon. "We finish this." He guided her toward an emergency exit, taking out 2 pursuing agents on the way. Outside, the city lights shimmered on the wet pavement as sirens began to wail in the distance. They dove into Lena's car and sped off, bullets chasing them down the ramp. "Where are we going?" she yelled. "The one place Kessler won't touch, the Pentagon archives. If we upload the files from there, the entire chain of command will see it before he can bury it." Lena looked at him, stunned. "That's suicide." Marcus gave a grim half-smile. So was Darak's gate. Hours later, they were inside the heart of D.C., blending through early morning traffic, faces hidden beneath caps. The city was waking up, unaware that 2 fugitives were carrying the truth that could topple its most decorated heroes. Inside the Pentagon's outer gate, Marcus used an old clearance card, one he'd sworn to destroy years ago. The system blinked red, then green. He was in. As they moved through the corridor, Lena whispered, "Marcus, once this goes live, they'll come for you harder than ever." He paused, meeting her eyes. "They already have. The difference is this time, I'll make them chase the truth, not me." In a secure data room, he inserted the flash drive and began the upload. Line after line of classified files streamed onto the network. "Once it hits 100%, Lena said, "every federal server will have it. It's unstoppable." But before they could finish, alarms began blaring. "Security breach detected." Kessler's voice echoed through the loudspeakers. "Marcus Langston, I should have killed you myself." Marcus froze. Cameras turned. The doors locked. Kessler's face appeared on the monitor, cold and calm. "You think you're the hero in this story?" Kessler sneered. "You're just the last ghost who hasn't realized he's already dead." Marcus smirked faintly, holding his ground as the upload hit 92%. "Maybe, but this ghost leaves proof behind." Gunfire erupted. Soldiers stormed the hall. Marcus fought through them, buying every second he could. The upload reached 99%. He was hit once, a graze on his arm, but he kept moving. As Lena shouted his name, Marcus slammed the final command key. Upload complete. Every screen in the Pentagon lit up with classified documents, contracts, videos, and wire transfers, all tied to Kessler and Voss. The truth was out. Kessler's face on the monitor twisted in horror. "What have you done?" Marcus looked up at the camera, breathing hard. I finished the mission. Then, with a single shot, he destroyed the main terminal, cutting all feeds before anyone could trace him. Smoke filled the air. He grabbed Lena and ran. Outside, helicopters began circling. The city burned with alarms and headlines. And somewhere above, as dawn broke over Washington, D.C., a single message was spreading across every major network. U.S. Navy SEAL commander exposes high-level treason. Leaked files confirm Admiral involvement. Marcus Langston, Iron Ghost, vanished once again. But this time, he didn't disappear as a fugitive. He disappeared as a legend. As Admiral Chase's men stood in stunned silence, the air between the two warriors, one seasoned by power, the other forged by honor, was thick with respect. The Admiral, his voice uncharacteristically soft, said, "Iron Ghost, the legend who saved 2 SEAL teams in Kandahar." Marcus gave a small nod, his eyes reflecting both pain and pride. In that moment, everything changed. The Admiral straightened, offering Marcus a firm salute. The room followed, hundreds of elite soldiers snapping to attention, their respect now absolute. The father who had come for his son was no longer just a parent. He was a hero among heroes. Yet Marcus didn't bask in the recognition. He turned to his boy, placed a hand on his shoulder, and said, "Never let them tell you who you are, son. Show them." The Admiral stepped forward, his voice breaking slightly as he said, "Welcome back, Iron Ghost. And thank you for reminding us what real leadership looks like." Cameras captured the moment, and within hours, the clip spread across the nation, a powerful image of humility, respect, and the breaking of silent prejudice. The once dismissive Admiral invited Marcus to speak at the Naval Academy, ensuring his story would inspire future generations of SEALs. It wasn't just redemption, it was the rewriting of history through courage and truth. As the tension eased, Marcus placed a gentle hand on his son's shoulder and smiled, a rare, quiet smile that spoke of peace finally earned. The Admiral approached, extending his hand with genuine respect. "I owe you and your family an apology," he said. Marcus accepted it with grace, replying, "Just treat the next man you meet with the same respect, no matter who he is." The room fell silent again, this time out of admiration. Jamal's eyes shone as he realized what kind of legacy his father carried, not just strength, but humility and forgiveness. Later that day, the base held a small ceremony to honor Iron Ghost, though Marcus requested no publicity. His only wish was to continue training young SEALs to lead with integrity. As the sun set over the naval yard, Marcus and his family stood together, finally free of the shadows of doubt and prejudice. And now, dear viewers, what would you have done if you were in the Admiral's place? Would you have been able to see the hero beyond the uniform or beyond the color of his skin? This story reminds us that true strength is silent, and real heroes don't need to boast. They let their actions speak. Thank you for watching Swift Tale. If you're visiting for the first time, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that reveal the hidden power of courage, humanity, and redemption. Drop a comment below. What did you learn from Marcus's journey? Until next time, stay inspired and stay kind.